Okay, sorry about that technical difficulties. We will splice that together in post post production, and hopefully we'll get that fixed. So we had just really started we had just started getting to talk about all the different aspects of what the moon represents. So the sphere of the moon represents imagery, and the outermost shell of things, the reflection of things, how we actually see each other, and how we interact with one another. Let's see, where's my? Let's see, am I sharing my screen, you guys? I am not, am I? There we
I
go.
can see you.
You can see me, but not my screen. There we go. Haha. Are you seeing my screen now?
Yes, yes.
There we go. Okay, great, great. All right, and then I need to go back to this and that. All right. So yeah, the outermost shell of all things is being uh is being interacted with through the sphere of the moon, but also within the realm of the moon, because the outermost appearance of things is ruled by the moon. It's also the realm of deception, because what we see is not always what we get. It's the realm of where we could be tempted to fall into the traps of our immediate desires or whatnot. It's we don't really know what's going on in this material world. That fundamental flaw to everything that exists is always sort of black flagging us at the last lap and trying to undermine what we're doing. But that negative aspect that exists in everything has a lunar component to it, and in the moon, it's the realm of deception, being ensnared, being tempted to do things that are not appropriate, that you wished you hadn't done. Um, all the things that come with regret and cause regret. Uh, let's see. Yes, we are being recorded, by the way, Joey. And I think I said, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pause recording here. Oh, okay, great. Okay, never mind. We're going to keep going then. Right. So, uh, right. So because it's the realm of deception and whatnot, you have to be really careful when you start to enter into the lunar realm. It's also the realm of the astral realm. So, like when we talk about doing astral travel and astral projection and moving around the astral realm, what we're doing is we're using our imagination to enter into the lowest realms of the lunar sphere. Like, we're barely getting out of the elemental realm, and we're opening up our consciousness to that lunar realm where we can receive the images of the spiritual reality and go beyond the surface level and see what's going on inside of things. So you have to be careful of getting distracted by the images of things, but also understand that within the realm of the moon, you can start to go deeper beyond the surface level and into that astral side of things, where you get intuition, premonitions. The moon rules over all of your psychic abilities, all of your sensations of the spiritual realm. Your spiritual senses are all tuned in the lunar realm. There's a whole argument that we don't ever leave the astral realm when we do magic, that all of our magic, that we conjure these spirits and then we interact with them all within the sphere of the moon, because that's the realm of psychic communication and the bidirectional communication between the spiritual world and our material world. It's the realm of the moon where the above meets the below. It's at the edge of the sphere of the moon, where it gets turned over to these elemental kings, where this idea actually materializes, right? So when we get up to the precipice of the material world, and our consciousness is starting to perceive that spiritual reality, we're starting to actually interact with that spiritual truth through our psychic senses, and that's all happening within the astral realm. And the idea that we would have any senses to actually interact with anything with beyond the realm of the moon, there are arguments that basically, once you get to Venus, everything that you're experiencing, you're still seeing it all from the realm of the moon. You're just watching like a video almost, and the astral realm is taking on all the pieces of the. Hi Giles, thanks for joining. Hopefully all the links got updated. So yeah, So the surface level that we can see through because of within the astral realm, once we tune our awareness into that astral realm, we can see what's going on below the surface, right? And the moon, within a 28-day period, it passes around the earth, or I mean, it appears to pass around the earth, and it goes through, from our perspective, all 12 of the signs of the zodiac. It passes all the other all the other six, I guess, spheres of the planets. And as it's going through the zodiac, it's receiving the rays from the zodiac energies, or whatever, that are the fates are projecting into this material world. And it passes through the seven other planets, or six other planets, and it receives their rays. And it's receiving all this information, and everything that comes into being has to pass through that realm of the moon, right, before it can come here into our experience. So everything that happens that's related to A, B, C, or D is going to have a corresponding E, F, G, and H that doesn't manifest, that we can actually tap into through the realm of the moon. So all these subtle energies that are being received by the moon and parceled out into our experiences, we can still tap into that, even if we don't necessarily know what's going on. So that's where our communications in Mercury, our emotional initiations that we go through in Venus, all these things come together and play a huge role in us being able to manipulate the energies of the lunar realm. And one of the things I really hate is the idea of energies. I've gotten a lot of grief about using the word from my friends who are opposed to New Age shenanigans. Um, so it's a sloppy way of referring to the powers of creation, and it's something that a lot of people have rightfully objected to over the years. So I try to avoid that particular the idea of energy, but I mean, it's just another model, it's only a model, but it's kind of sloppy and inaccurate, so I try to avoid it. But the energies of these planets, whatever the essences of these planets, the moon is passing through them and receiving them, and we can tap into it to receive those things. So, and in the same way that all of the moon reflects the light of the sun and into our dark world and this material world, it's reflecting these energies of these other planets. It's focusing them. It's like a lens that's taking all these different energies and condensing them and coalescing them and focusing them into this material world. The moon rules over the increase and the decrease of things, right? So the waxing and the waning of things are key to all of the things we're going to talk about when we look at how the occult principles of the moon are tapped into and manifest here in the material world as magicians. Let's see. I think I've covered everything here on one more thing I wanted to mention. When we're doing astrological talismans, we can use silver for all the metals of all the planets, because of this property of the moon, where she passes through all the other elements and all the other zodiac signs and the other planetary energies. Because she is so receptive to all those things, and she is the lens that focuses all those energies, the metal of her planet can be used to substitute for every other metal in there. So if you're ever trying to create the physical material talismans that we talk about in this class from the Key of Solomon, you can always use silver for that. And blank seals or blank discs, they're silver plated discs, work great for spirits, and you can engrave them using a Dremel tool. It's super it's relatively easy to create real metal talismans for all the planets using silver and a Dremel tool. So definitely highly recommend it. I do that for all of my conjurations. It's really an incredibly useful way to get in touch with all these spirits. And the energy that you use, like your actual physical energy to engrave a metal talisman, it's not easy. I mean, I say it's easy. It's simple. It's not complicated, but it's a lot of work. And when you put that much work into things, that physical energy, you develop a resonance with this material object. I was talking earlier about how everything in this sublunar world is a manifestation of the intelligence, the creation of existence, the awareness of this all pervading, all inhabiting God, or whatever you want to call it, this deistic force that manifests as humans and angels and gods and demons and spirits and plants and trees and rocks. The thing that manifests as all of us is focused through this sphere. So we really do get to tap into all that stuff through this sphere, in the same way that she dissolves everything. She dissolves the barriers between things, and we'll talk a little bit about how she is the goddess of barriers here in just a minute. Let's see. Go on to the next one here. The triple goddess of the moon. So the moon has three different goddesses that are associated with her. Selene. Let's go ahead and pull these up. The three goddesses of the moon that we're going to talk about here. So the moon has a ton of deities associated with her. It's not like there's any one goddess that has been completely encapsulating everything about the moon. But in the Greek traditions that inform most of our occult stuff, the actual moon itself, the goddess of the moon itself, was Selene. And Selene drove around in a chariot, just like Helios did. Helios drove around the chariot of the sun, and his rays were reflected off the chariot of the moon. And she drove around in her own chariot. It's a silver chariot, of course. It's drawn by two oxen in this particular image that I made, but also horses have been shown pulling her around. I think there's something that shows goats. I don't really remember for sure if there was goats. I think I might have made that up. But the idea that she's being drawn across the heavens in this chariot is part of what she is. She's also called Phoebe, right? The sister of Phoebus. Phoebus is a name for Apollo. And because Phoebus is the feminine form of Phoebe is the feminine form of Phoebus, in the same way that Artemis is the sister of Apollo, Phoebe is the sister of Phoebus, and the moon is conflated there with Artemis, right? So we know that Selene is Artemis because of Phoebe and Phoebus and Apollo and Artemis. So they get put together, but they remain depicted throughout Greek myths separately. They're worshipped together. When you do spells to Selene, you're also doing spells to, and we'll take a look at an actual conjuration, but you do spells to Artemis and you do spells to Hecate. They're considered three aspects of the same lunar force, right? But each one represents different aspects of the moon. Selene represents just the moon itself and the moon going over the sky. And when you refer to the moon as Selene, she's that's who you're talking about. Well, that's the aspect of the moon that you're referring to. She's also called Mene, which is literally month. I started to talk earlier about how time is ruled by Saturn on the high end of the chain of manifestation, but on the lower end of the chain of manifestation, the moon is what actually parcels out and separates the time into parcels, into its 28 mansions, 28 days, right? The days of the moon determine the life cycle of the human female reproductive system. The whole process of materializing humans has a 28-day cycle. Its cycle is pieced out by the same period of time that is the whole waxing and waning of one lunar cycle, right? So she is time on Earth. She is time on Earth for life. So it's time and pulling things out along the way. Let's see. The month. So one of my favorite spells to her is from the Greek magical papyri, and it refers to her as Selene and Mene and Artemis and Hecate, and it gets really into her. It's a really great spell. But by the third century, point being, by the third century, she had the magical interactions with the moon often involved calling on all three of these different goddesses who started off as separate entities, but got conflated in all practical terms as the same entity. They're still shown differently in art, but it's just so that you can tap into the specific aspects of it that you want to show. The family of Selene. So she loved the mortal Endymion. Endymion was one of these handsome youths. He's one of the most handsome men that was ever born to the mortals. Every once in a while, a guy comes along who is so handsome, all the gods fall in love with him. And like Ganymede Zeus fell in love with Ganymede, and Endymion Selene fell in love with Endymion. Uh, she actually fell in love with him, and so she snuck off. She quit driving her cart around. She gave her chariot to her brother Apollo to drive, while she went and hung out with her lover. And it was so bad for everything. It was pretty much the same story as when uh, Helios's son took his cart for a ride. The nights weren't the right length of time anymore. He was going too close to the earth. He was going too far away from the earth. He wasn't materializing in the way that he was supposed to. Apollo just was not a very good moon chariot driver. So eventually what happened, uh, uh, she Zeus grants Endymion immortality, and puts him in a cave where he sleeps for all time, and eternal youth and eternal sleep in this cave. And in his sleep, then Selena can come and visit him in his dreams, and they have lots and lots of sex and children and everything. And they have like over 50 kids. Those are the months. She is the that's the Menai. When you look at different ways that Greeks, like we have the Julian calendar and the Gregorian calendar here in our current culture, and the calendars that we came up with to space out time, the Greeks had a calendar that they put together based on the Mene, and it was like, oh my god, it was super complicated. But it's like it had like an 8-year cycle, and every 8 years there was a different number of months or something like that. And there are 50 months in a cycle, and each of the 50 months were the children of Selene and Endymion. So basically, they created this whole system of time out of her family, and everything about time, and the rulership of the seasons are also part of her. So yeah, I think that she's the mother of the Horai, the seasons. Yes, this by Endymion as well. So like all of time, and the passing of the year, the passing of the month, the passing of the days, all these things are ruled over by Selene, and not time in the same way that Saturn is, but just in the measurement of time and in the parceling of it and the calendarization of things. So you rely on the moon to tell you where you're at relative to where you're going to be in a month or so for short term stuff. Let's see. Her other children include Pandia, which is all gifts, so all positive things, and Ursa, the all-nourishing dew. This is an aspect of Selene that is one of her powers, right? The powers of the goddess, like Artemis, and the goddess Artemis is the goddess of childbirth and protects women as they're having, she's the god of childbirth. Selene is the god of all nourishing dew. So every night, when the sun sets and the moon comes up and the moon goes down and the sun comes up again, we have dew on the ground because it condensed overnight. And in the old times, they said that the dew was what nourished life. Life itself absorbed the energy to grow at night from this dew, and the dew was the gift of the moon. So the dew that we find on grass is actually the essence of life itself that's been passed on by Selene to the material world. So she's the sustainer of life on Earth. She's the sun is the source of life, but it's through her application of time over time of the application of this energy, the reflection of that energy, the focusing of that light of the sun into the material world, that maintenance of it all comes from her, right? She's the one that rules over that aspect of things. She's also the mother of the seasons, the 4 seasons, and also the Musaeus. Musaeus is a pretty famous poet. He was just one of her mortal children. He ended up dying, but anyway, those are her primary children. One of her myths, one of the myths about her that we get from Jason and the Argonauts from the Odyssey, the as she would pass over at night, she would disappear wane a little bit at a time, and then she would turn red sometimes, like there, and she would be eclipsed. So the moon itself would disappear erratically sometimes, and they wouldn't really understand why that was happening. So they came up with all these myths about what was going on, and specifically they believed that the Thessalonian witches were drawing down the moon. Right? If you remember drawing down the moon, this was actually what witches do. They drew down the moon so that in the darkness they could do their witchy things. And they also allegedly, and I haven't found which myth says this, but allegedly they took her blood and used that blood for magical rituals. I personally believe that what they're talking about when they use her blood for magical rituals is the dew, the essence of dew that sustains and maintains all of life. They're talking about working with the powers of the moon to actually create things and create magical things. So let's see. I'm sorry, I'm getting pinged by somebody trying to. So people are having some hard times rejoining the meeting. Let me send them the link real quick. I apologize for the interruption, but I don't want them to miss out on this. Oh, this is annoying. I can't find my screen. Okay, here we go. Okay, Alex. Sorry about this, you guys. And this is entirely stuff that I'm not entirely sure how that happened. Okay, so hopefully we'll have 3 more people hop in. All right, so carrying on with our presentation. Um, the Thessalonian witches were to describe what was going on when the moon would fade away or be eclipsed or would have a red tint to it. They blamed these Thessalonian witches for drawing down the moon and stealing her power for their witchcraft, and that's basically what we do with our Hecate rites. Whenever we do a Hecate rite to call on her for help with our assistance, we're basically drawing down the moon. And when we do our Hecate rites, in theory, you're not going to see the moon in the sky because she's here with us, right? So that's happening with us. So the idea that we are actually stealing this power from the moon is not a new thing at all. But it didn't used to be all love and light and kindness. It was actually it was considered we were trying to eat her, consume her, and basically in ancient Greece there were two kinds of people. There were the people that were writing all the histories and the philosophies and the observations of things and the social commentary and the explorations of thought and whatnot. And then there were the actual people that lived and breathed and had their being in Zeus and in the day-to-day life. And what the hoi polloi people, like the people of the community, did was magic, right? The Greek magical papyri are representative of what most people did when it came to magic. And then the people in the city that recorded history and wrote the stuff about philosophy and whatnot, they wanted to depict existence. So it was basically the city versus the country, in the same way that we have like blue cities and red rural areas here in America, and I believe in France too. It's pretty the further out in the country you go, the more conservative and the more redneck people can tend to be. The rustic gods are the rustic rulers of the rustic areas. So this is how it's always been. Like the Apollonian intellectuals of the city have always looked down on the rustics of the wild, but the rustics of the wild have always had a stronger connection to the gods themselves. Zeus was raised by the rustic gods. They were the ones banging on the shields to hide him from from his father. So like the whole idea of rustic gods and magic being connected to the earth and all that is to be found there. So the vexation of the moon by witches is something that does pop up in Seneca's stories. So Seneca and in the Odyssey, Homer. That thing, Homer. You've heard of Homer, I'm sure. So in other myths, she was one of the myths of the moon is that she fought with Typhon. So when Gaia had Typhon to punish the gods of Olympus, for I don't remember exactly what it was they had done, but they had pissed off Gaia, and Gaia sent Typhon to punish them, and they were fighting, and all the gods ran away, and Zeus fought and lost, and Hermes came and saved him, and all this stuff, right? But early on, when they were fighting, one of the only gods that would go up against him was the moon, and she would drive her cart head on right into it because Typhon had horns, and she had horns on her cart. So the horns of the moon would clash against the horns of Typhon, and that's where all the damages that we see on the moon, all the pock marks come from, according to that particular thing. So she's also a friend of Dionysius. We'll go over the spell in the next slide, but he did a whole ritual to the moon, and he calls on Selene and Artemis and Hecate and their different aspects and their different forms to get magic to help him against this guy named Pentheus, who is trying to escape from, who is coming against him. So it's a very fully articulated and clear spell of lunar magic. And of course, she absolutely did help with that. Let's see, drawn down by witches who used her blood in their rites. I can't find where the idea that they actually used her blood came from. It was just mentioned in passing on one of the websites that I was researching this on. But I do believe that that's referring to her dew that nourishes plants and animals. I don't think it's really the blood of the moon necessarily. But speaking of the blood of the moon, menstrual blood is a very effective, powerful tool, as we're going to talk about. We aren't going to talk about it, but it does show up in Agrippa. But the idea of using menses in ritual is a time honored tradition, and anything that calls for blood, if you use the blood of the moon, it's always going to be more effective. It's a renewable resource. It's a sustainable resource. I mean, pretty much. It's people who are bleeding this month are likely going to be bleeding again next month. It's unless they have another magical act going on of transformation or birth. So various reasons that you don't have that kind of thing, and of course, are all medical conditions. But in theory, in general, the way humans seem to try to materialize new humans involves blood on a regular basis. So yeah, you can always find the blood of the moon for your magical purposes. She's also the goddess of lunacy. So this spell that Dionysus did he's praying to her to cause madness in his enemy. When we go through anyway, yeah. So Dionysus, it says he waited for a dark night, and they appealed to Mene, the moon, to come forward and help. So he appeals to her as the daughter of Helios. This is not traditional. Her family, I actually mentioned who her parents were. I don't think I wrote it down, of course, but she was the child of Empyrean or Hyperion, which means the above the eon. He actually went above the eon, and Aether, I think it was blue Aether or something, but it's basically the sky itself. So Hyperion went up above the highest parts of the sky, and together they fathered the moon, or parented the moon. So the moon came into being from those two titans. I wanted to say that. Anyway, so Dionysus prays off to her to basically drive his enemy crazy. And when he does it, he calls on her as the daughter of Helios, which again, I don't know exactly where that comes from. Mene, of many turnings, the goddess of the month, the nurse of all. O Selene, driver of the silver car. That's another way to call on her. If thou art Hecate of many games. Well, listen to the way that he structures a spell. This is a very cool way to do ritual. If you are Hecate of many names, if in the night you shake your mystic torch in the in brand carrying hand, right? So he calls on her by her epithets. And when I go over all this stuff with the myths for each of these planets, the reason I'm doing that is so that you can call on them in your rituals like this. This is the materialization of why we learned all this crap and all these lessons. Is so that we can call on them through our vocalization, our enunciation, and our conjuration in the things of their mythos that brings them forward. So uh, if you are Hecate of many names, if in the night you take your mystic torch and brand carrying hand, right? We're going to learn about how Hecate carried her brand around and showed Demeter every corner of the earth when they were looking for Persephone, right? So brand carrying hand, come night wanderer. She wandered the night. The moon was up every night. Come forward. So if you're really this, he says, he challenges her. He starts by challenging the god. If you're really Hecate, come here, appear, right? If that's you, come here. If you're the stag hunter Artemis, if on the hills thou dost eagerly hunt with fawn killing Dionysus, be thy brother's helper now, right? So if this is you, right, is a little bit of a challenge. You question the gods' ability to materialize what it is that they're supposed to materialize. You see this in Jehovah, right? In the Bible, in the Old Testament, and the Psalms. It's like, don't let these kingdoms besmirch your name, O Lord. Not for me, but for you. Don't save me for me, but do it for your own reputation. There's this thing where we impugn upon the gods the suffering of whatever we're going through. And that's sort of what this does, is it challenges the gods to prove themselves. It's like, if you're really real, show me now. But going back to the Old Testament, when Elijah received the mantle of authority from Elisha, the prophet, he went forward and he said, "Where now is the God of Israel? Where now?" He challenged God to prove that he was present before he crossed the water on dry land. He basically hit a river and was able to get across. That's where God was. Excuse me. So yeah. So anyway, if thou art the stag hunter Artemis, he says, if that's you, be thy brother's keeper now, be thy brother's helper now. He calls on her based on his relationship with her, because he's Dionysus. He's the one that has hunted with Artemis on the hills before. He knows that that's her. And he's like, if that's true, if we ever did this, if we have ever had fun under the night sky, by my relationship with you, I call upon you now, be here now. Right. And then he says, he explains his problem. I'm being chased out of Thebes by Pentheus, a mortal man, a creature quickly perishing, an enemy of God persecutes me. Right. So he identifies his enemy as the enemy of the God. He identifies his enemy by name, by city. Right. He gives him multiple ways to locate this entity. Or the person that he's actually cursing. When we actually do magic for other people, I always use the name of the person and their mother's maiden name, if that's at all possible to have, so that we can differentiate who they are on the planet. But you always want to offer more than one piece of information when you're identifying people in the material world. The way that he does it here is Thebes by Pentheus, right? So as a being of night, help Dionysus of the night. So when they pursue me, so he calls upon that aspect of her as the being of the night, because he's going to try to sneak out at night. If thou art Persephonia, right, whipperin of the dead, and yours are the ghosts which are subservient to the throne of Tartarus, let me see Pentheus, a dead man. So Persephonia is one of the names of Hecate. I believe Persephone's companion, basically the one that whips up the dead, and then it goes on to say, let me see Pentheus, a dead man, and let Hermes, thy musterer of ghosts. So you remember last week we talked about how he carried the wand around that allowed him to raise and wake up the dead. He's the musterer of ghosts here in this spell. So he's like, where was that? Hermes, thy muster of ghosts, lull to sleep the tears of Dionysus in his grief. So like, bring me the end of my sorrows. With Tartarian whip of thy Tiffany or furious Megaira, stop the foolish threats of Pentheus. So he goes on and on and on about what he wants her to do, calling on these attributes of her in her name, so that he can challenge her to succeed for him, right? And this is all based on this idea of hubris and pride and not hubris, I'm sorry, pride and your reputation, what you're actually representing yourself to be in this in the world, so that you can actually have something to show for yourself, right? To be able to impact things. Because when you're an invisible entity that rules over invisible forces, the only thing that you have to indicate yourself to other people is this temple, right? And in the temple, you get offerings and you get attention and you get to interact with your worshipers in this temple if you're manifesting things for them, right? And the only way that they're going to know to do that is if you're actively working for them. So they actually get paid in attention, they get paid in offerings, they get paid in gold and smells, because gods love smells. They love the scent of burning offerings. They love the scent of incense. They love the feel of the heat rising through the air. It empowers them. It gives them sustenance. It makes them more capable of doing things. That's why they work for us, right? That's why they behave as our partners in this creation thing, because they actually get paid in food that they desire. So to this appeal, Mene answered on high, night illuminating Dionysus, friend of plants, comrade of Mene, look to your grapes. Don't worry about this. You worry about your grapes. I got you. My concern is the mystic rites of Bacchus. For the earth ripens the offspring of your plants when it receives the dewy sparkles of unresting Selene. So, like, there we see her dews again are being absorbed by the soil for his grapes. She's like, you need to do that. All right. My concern is more about you making sure that you are taking care of your grapes. So you do that. Dancing Bacchus, stretch out your thyros and look to your offspring. You need not fear a race of puny men whose mind is light, whose threats the whips of the Eumenides, the Erinyes, repress perforce. So she's saying, don't worry about it. We're going to send the Erinyes after them. And the Erinyes are the Fates. They are the Furies. They're the ones that mete out the whips and the scourges of life. So, like, when you're having a bad day, the Furies are the ones giving you a bad day. The pop tire, the late to work, the loss of your job, your manager is in a bad mood because they aren't having the sexual relations that they need to have a decent life for themselves. They're frustrated with their partner and they're taking it out on you. These are all the whips of the Furies. Every bad thing that we experience here is entirely just a reminder from the Furies that we are suffering. We're suffering the results of our impiety, right? So, and basically what that means is if you're having a bad time of it, you are not taking care of your life. You are not taking care of your car in a way that will keep it from popping its tire if you get a flat tire. It's your fault. It's all your fault. And you're going to be punished with the inconvenience of that because you were not pious enough to think that, oh, I should not drive in a part of town where a truck is carrying nails. It's a ridiculous amount of expectation. But the idea is that you could be perfect all the time and then you wouldn't have any bad things happen. This is the fundamental theory of the Furies and the Fates and the gods and Greek magic and our approach to this whole thing. That when we do this stuff, the idea really is that if only we knew everything and if only we were doing it right, then we wouldn't suffer anymore. Personally, if you can't tell, I think that's horse crap. I think suffering is part of existence, and it's just part of it. It's not on purpose. It's not because it's valuable and it's good. It's not because it's doing something. It's just, it is what it is. We have monsters in life. Gaia creates monsters. She just creates. She doesn't care. She doesn't love everything and want everything to be good and healthy all the time. She wants it to be fighty. We have to kill each other to eat. We have to kill animals. We have to kill grass. Grass has to die for the light that it absorbed to fuel our cells. Something has to die every time. And that's just the way of life. And it's not good. The idea that it has to be good that is presented by Plato, I find that offensive. The idea that we have to have this has to be good or bad. It's not. It just is. It doesn't have to be. Stop trying to make my suffering mean something good because it's not good. That's my stance on that. I don't think we should I don't think our suffering should have to anyway. The thing is for for the purposes of this class anyway. The thing is that these forces of the Furies can be turned against your enemies through the intercession of the gods. So that's what Selene does. She's like, don't you worry, Dionysus, you grow your wine because I want the wine. By the way, wine is sacred to the moon. The moon loves her wine. If you ever are wondering what to give her as an offering, a nice little glass of red wine is always appreciated. Let's see. Where were we? I command madness and excite lunacy. I will not leave unpunished earthly violence against you. So yeah, she is the goddess of lunacy. Like lunacy is really when we get too much. If you ever have any brushes with mental illness, people who are mentally ill are too much of one part of a human. You know, they're turned up to 12 instead of just like at a more rational 7 or 8 on occasion. You know, they're just a little too much on their imagination side. They believe things that aren't true. They see things that aren't there. Luna, right? The glamour, the imagery, the outermost things of things. They see things that aren't there. They respond to the full moon. Crazy people come out on the full moon. The werewolf myths, the increase in police activity, the urban myths that we have of that. The cycles of the moon can be tracked in the mental illness wards across the world, according to anecdotal evidence, if nothing else. I'm not sure if there have ever been studies done, but there's a lunar equivalent to madness. She is the mother of madness. Dreams and ambitions can be something that drive a person crazy. You know, the inspirations that we get in our sleep can drive us nuts. You know, the inability to tell the difference between what is quote unquote real and what is an illusion is that discernment. You know, in the realm of the moon, it gets a little blurry, it gets a little fuzzy. It's where the earth is subjected to the watery aspects of things, and it gets a little muddy, it gets a little murky, right? And that's where things get a little crazy, because it's hard to tell what's real and what's not. And that's what lunacy is the inability to know what is actually the real outermost image of things, right? You mistake something for something else. The sin of this sphere, the negative aspect of it as it materializes in life, is the ensnaring tempters, right? The urge to make it more, to make your experience mean something personal to you that it's not actually about, right? Because it feels better. If you think it's going to feel better, or you imagine it's going to feel better, it's not even something that's real. It's a lie from these tempting aspects of life. It represents the part of life where we want to pretend like everything is going to be okay, even though we know it's dangerous. That's the big deceit and the big conceit of the moon, is that it's a safe place, and it's really not. So when we talk about actually how dreams, she is the mistress of dreams. Um, her cult, she had cults like everybody else in the Greek times. Her cult was a cult of prophecy, and that was in the same way that Helios was the light of the sun, and Apollo was the god of divination, because the light of the sun could see everything, and in the light you could see what was going to happen. You could see what was really going on. It was the light that empowered the ability of prophecy. So solar entities were like prophetic entities. In the same way, the moon is a prophetic entity, because she's the light of the night, and she sees everything that's happening. Everything that materializes has to pass through her, and she communicated to people through their dreams. And there's a sanctuary of Eno on the way to Athens, I think. I'm not sure exactly where it was, but people would go there and they would consult with the oracles, and basically they had the whole there. If you read the Greek magical papyri, there are entire lamp rituals where you write out your name of your request, your question for the god that you want answered on a piece of linen, and you twist it up and you put it in a oil lamp so that it becomes the wick. And then as it burns, you go to sleep next to it, and it burns through the night, and you get a dream back as your answer from the gods. And that's how they would actually communicate with Selene, is she would go down in the dreams in the same way that she communicated with Endymion to create things in the world. She would communicate with people in their dreams to help them materialize what they're looking for. So that was the Selene aspect of things. Turning our attention to Artemis. Artemis was also the goddess of the moon, but she was the goddess of the horned parts, the pointy bits. Um, uh, in the same way that Phoebe was the sister to Phoebus, so also Artemis is sister to Apollo, right? So in that way, they ended up getting sort of conflated. She's the goddess of hunt and animal life. She's the pointy, horny part of the goddess. When she's depicted wearing a veil, she's also got horns up, holding up the veil, the disk of the moon. That pointy bit is the arrows of the moon, and the arrows of the moon are what cause plague, sickness, healing. I said healing. It should be healing. Oh God, that drives me nuts. There. Yeah, so the pointy bits are what bring the actual the pain and the suffering of our travails. In the same, I was talking about the Arines earlier, but like all the sickness and death and skirmishes and animosity between people, Artemis is the bringer of those things. And if you think about the stereotype, the whole social image that goes with the quote unquote PMSing woman, right? The whole premenstrual irritability is the pointy side of the moon, right? And she's the goddess of the hunt. She's not the women. The women didn't used to be that women were considered quite to be trodden upon as much as they are these days. But women were the hunters, and when they were running with the moon, as it were, the maenads would tear the men apart in drunken orgies of destruction. The women of the moon would go around killing men in their menstrual rites, their rites of the moon that were all about blood and destruction. So yeah, there was like this whole acknowledgement of that feminine, the negative aspect of femininity, the negative aspect of masculinity was also present. I mean, it's not like we were like Ares wasn't known to be a dick. Apollo was a complete ass. He killed 14 of his kids. I mean, the whole thing about the thing about Greeks that I love is that every aspect of our terrible existence are represented, and the point isn't that everything is perfect all the time and we have a good time. The point is that they acknowledge that it's terrible. It wasn't great for them either, but they're doing the best they can, and uh here's some good things to make it better along the way. They like it, the boons of the gods are there to offset the negativity of the other aspects of it. So in the same way that Ares was the bringer of peace, even though he was the god of war, Artemis is the bringer of healing and the end of all the things that she is negative about, right? So she's also the peaceful hearth, the bringing peace to your hearth and home, the protection of women during childbirth, right? The other side of the menstrual cycle, right? The premenstrual cycle can be negative, but the postmenstrual cycle, the childbirth phase, Artemis is also there. She's there during birth to bring life into being and to protect that life. And also she's the pain of piercing the veil of the unmanifest with our mortal coil. It hurts to come into being. It hurts the mother. It hurts the child. It's not fun. And that painfulness is Artemis, but that protection of that life force is also Artemis. Artemis is known as her arrows are what she shoots her effects into this material world with, right? So like all the meteors that we see in the sky are the arrows of Artemis shooting through the material world and the manifestations of the spheres beyond the moon are all coming through the realm of the moon and appearing as Artemis's arrows, and that's the reflection downward of the will of God, right? So yeah, so these arrows are also the bringer of healing. So one of her names is Theus. She's a sotira, sotira. Soteriology is the study of salvation in the spiritual system. Soteria means salvation. She's a goddess of salvation, right? And her arrows that bring death and plague are also the arrows that alleviate that. And she is known as the protector of the young of both animals and humans alike. She loves the innocent, and she's not interested in some of those other aspects of things, right? So yeah. The next aspect that we're going to talk about is Hecate. Um, so going back to Artemis real quick, Artemis is she was the anyway, she was known as the far shooter, right? So her arrows that she was shooting into being, I wanted to say, is how she impacted things from afar. And what the word that means far shooter and effector from afar is hecaton, right? Hecate, right? Hecate means the far shooter, um, the far influencer. She who influences from afar. She carries two torches, right? She was Artemis, the playmate. So picture this, right? The gods have these kids, and the kids play together, and Artemis and Persephone are friends, and they play in the fields together, and they're hanging out all the time, and they're really like they're BFFs. Like they are the squad, right? And they hang out with Hermes, and he's cool, but he's kind of like their gay friend, their androgynous friend who kind of is like in the friend zone and likes them and everything. But they all hang out together, and they're all like the youthful god squad, right? So uh one day, you know, Persephone goes off with Hades, and either she goes off intentionally and willingly, or she was taken against her will. There's multiple versions of the story. I like to think that she was enjoying herself because she does not mind. In my experience with her, she loves being the queen of the dead, and she's quite happy there. I have wholly embraced, based on my experiences with her, the idea that she and Hades were in love, and the rape of Persephone was more an affront to Demeter, because Demeter didn't want her daughter to be married. So they just kind of eloped. But that's my interpretation of things. I don't pretend like it's true for everyone. It's just been my experience with her. But anyway, so Artemis, her best friend, gets kidnapped or whatever, disappears, elopes, runs off, disappears, and doesn't tell Artemis where she's going, obviously. So Artemis goes to her mom and is like, I can't find her anyway. Where's my friend Persephone? And she's like, I don't know. So let's go find her. So she's the one that helped guide Demeter in her search for Persephone at night. So she's the torch bearer. That's why she's carrying the torches. By the 5th century BC, she was already identified with Artemis. So Hecate and Artemis had already been conflated, even though they had different roles. Hecate was supposed to be the daughter of the Titans, who ruled over earth and sea and sky. When during the Titanomachy, she assisted Zeus. She's the key bearer. We know that she's the bearer of the keys to hell. She's the one when Zeus actually released his brothers from the Titan that held them captive. He went to hell to release the Cyclops. The Cyclops forged the lightning bolt and the helmet of Zeus that granted invisibility, and the shield of, I'm sorry, the Triton of Poseidon that granted the power over storms. Right. So the trident and the shield, I'm sorry, the trident and the helmet and the lightning bolt were all forged by the Cyclopes, and the Cyclopes had been trapped in hell by the Titan, Kronos. Kronos was keeping them in Tartarus because they were ugly. He didn't like how they looked. So he was keeping the monsters in Tartarus. Hecate, right? She had 3 heads, right? So she did not look like everybody else. She was one of the monsters, the monstrous Titans, and her brothers were being held in hell. So she sided with Zeus to free her brothers from hell. And it was her key to hell Hecate Cleiaduce, that released the Cyclops to be able to empower the gods to overthrow Kronos and establish the rulership that Gaia demanded, right? So it was Hecate who was able to actually help with that. So she was a Titan prior to the fact that she was conflated with Artemis, because Artemis came later. She was, the child of Leto and Zeus. Uh, so anyway, it didn't happen like in chronological order by any means. But Hecate and Artemis were conflated by the 5th century BC. And we know that like the Hesiod theogony, I believe that was like 800 BC. I'm not sure. I'm not exactly sure of my dates, but it was before 500 BC. Was when the Hesiod came together, and that's like our oldest myth cycle. And then there's other theogonies from the Orphic mysteries around, I want to say like 800 BC, and then by 500 BC, we ended up with Artemis and Hecate together. So that's sort of like the history of different versions of things and how they all came together. But Hecate is far shooter. It means the far shooter. Let's see. Let's see. Often referred to as the only begotten daughter because she was the only child of the Titans Perses and Asteria. And it was significant because Hecate got her power over earth, sea, and sky from those Titans. And when Zeus defeated Kronos, she got to retain her powers. He didn't take anything from her, and in fact gave a portion of the powers of the earth and sea and sky that he and Poseidon and Hades were to become the kings of. Like Hades was a king of hell, and Poseidon was a king of the sea, and Zeus was the king of Olympus. They each gave a piece of their kingdom to Hecate in addition to that, because she was the Titan of earth, sea, and sky. So she was very powerful, and she was the goddess of the night. Like anything that happened in the darkness, when the moon was dark, it was the time of Hecate. So she ruled the waning moon. She was the goddess of the dark side of things. She ruled necromancy because she searched the night with Demeter. She found Persephone in hell, right? So she became the guide to hell, and it's with her torches that she lights the way for the dead to the underworld. Hermes is her companion when she walks down the path to hell with Persephone. When Demeter has to say goodbye and we have wintertime, Persephone goes to hell with her best friends Mercury and Hecate, and they walk down the path and they laugh and giggle all the way to hell, right? So that's and they have pictures of this happening on the sides of pots in ancient Greece. And I'm not making this up. I mean, I'm telling the story, but I'm not making it up. So anyway, she's the god of necromancy, right? Because she's the guide to hell. She's a psychopomp for the undead, and Hermes has this staff where he wakes up the undead and the souls that get stuck, and he shoos them along. So they're walking to hell with this entourage of angry, hungry spirits around them. And they're the hounds of Hades, right? And the hounds of Hecate, and they're running around all over. And anyway, she's the god of witchcraft. So witchcraft is not just anyway. So because she's a god of the spirits, she understands witchcraft, and she understands the secret properties of things, right? The understanding of those forces that pass through the lens of the sphere of the moon is what teaches witchcraft. The whole point of Agrippa's 3 books of occult philosophy is to give you wisdom, is to give you knowledge, because knowing all things, you will know God, right? Knowing yourself, you will know all things. Knowing the pieces and parts that makes up Rufus, I'm going to catch a glimpse of Zeus, the all in all, and then I'll understand Zeus the middle better, and then I'll see Zeus the head, right? Because it's all the same, right? And it's all part of it. It's this knowledge, it's this wisdom, it's this understanding of all the things that exist and how they interact with each other over time. Knowing everything, that's all we want. That's nothing hubristic or prideful about our aims as magicians. Nothing outside the bounds of normal expectations there, I promise you. But I mean, the point of our whole occult purpose is unification with this overarching cosmological Thea, this God, right? God, Zeus, whatever you want to call it.
The point of our magic is to merge with this cosmic deity and leave behind the sufferings of the Furies, and they can't get you if you're not there. That's the secret of all of this stuff, is you behave in a way that creates your reality. You honor your essence by becoming a creator, using the powers of the seven spheres to express your will, to focus that divine light through your own lunar sphere into this material world. You create life and you nurture it and you tend to it as it comes into being, as it reaches its apex, and as it descends and passes on. You replace that hole that it leaves with something new. You are the creator of your life when you're a functioning magician. You've attained a conscious interacting role with the creative aspects of existence. And it's through this knowledge and wisdom that we receive that comes from our witchcraft, our understanding of the herbs and the incenses and the timing of things. It's our occult knowledge that empowers us to change the world, right? And we can never lose sight of the fact that that's what we're doing. We are learning how to change the world to make it what we want, right? And we're not the end authority on all things. We're not the boss of everything. We work together as a team. Everybody's doing it consciously or unconsciously. We're creating this world, and most people do it subconsciously. Most people do it in reactions to the Furies and the Irinyes, whatever the fates, they react to things. They don't consciously create their existence in a better way. It's not cohesive. It's a chaotic mess because nobody's focused on becoming fully what they are. And that's what drives us as magicians to be magicians, right? It's all about the moon, like understanding and compartmentalizing Mercury, mixing the I don't know, the tables, the rows and columns of Mercury, the correspondences, with that wisdom of how it all comes together and applying it to this world around us. That's why we're doing all this. Let's not lose sight of that. And Hecate is always there to teach us that. She's always there to remind us that we're here to create, and she's here to help, right? It's through the moon that we do our magic. That's why Agrippa's like, you got to make sure the moon isn't afflicted now, because it's through the moon that we do our magic. It's through the moon that we do our scrying. This is my scrying crystal. It's right here on my conjure table. It's what I do when I do magic is I look into this little image that looks like a moon, and I put my mind into it, and I'm observing in the astral realm the bodies of the spirits that they choose to take. I'm observing the symbols of the communications of the unseen. I'm receiving it and I'm observing it, and it's all through this astral imagination kind of feature of the human experience, right? I'm picturing something in the sphere, but this other force is animating it. It's not coming from me. I am imagining it, but I'm not driving it, if that makes sense. And it's that separation or that awareness of or providing space for a separate aspect of the consciousness of everything to manifest in your imagination is how you interact with that. And that's all in your head. It's all in your mind. The idea that we get a physical manifestation of these spirits. Yes, this physical world is a manifestation of these spirits. This is my physical manifestation of my conjuration right here on my desk. That is my conjuration. I conjured that thing. I used Amazon, but I conjured it into being. I chose it. I picked it. I paid for it. I worked for it. I manifested it. I used the forces of materialization to materialize this experience of this desk. I did that. Woo, but that's what we do, and that's what the whole thing is. When the time for this desk is gone, it'll be gone. When the time for Rufus Opus is gone, I'll be gone. We have cycles of being, and understanding that all of this is in the process of manifesting, materializing, and then declining and fading. All of it. That's just what it does, and it's going to keep doing that over and over and over again. You really understand that you don't have to worry about whether or not you fail along the way. It's not about succeeding every time. It's about creating every time, and you always create. You always succeed in creating something, even if you don't create what you want. You've changed something, so you're always succeeding. And once you understand that, and you understand that you don't have to win, like you don't have to actually achieve that success in that moment, because what you're doing is building towards that success. It frees you to experience and understand things in ways that you wouldn't otherwise, because your path is illuminated. Your path is illuminated by these torches of Hecate. It's there for you. So the way that we actually work with these things in practical terms, we use the sphere of the moon to open doorways, right? Because the moon is that gateway between the manifest and the unmanifest. It's the point of transition. So Hecate is a liminal goddess. She represents the gateway. She's the goddess of the threshold. She's there for us at the edges of things. We go to meet her at the crossroad where three paths connect, where it's that connection point. We go to meet her at dawn or at dusk, in between day and night, right? In the transitional mode. We go when the moon is at a crescent for certain things, right? Either waxing or waning for certain aspects of our right. We go when the moon is in the right phase. If we're doing new things, or if we're pursuing dark things, we do it when things are brightest, because when things are brightest, what happens next? Every time, it always gets darker right away. That's the power of the moon, right? We know what's going to happen next. And when it's darkest, what do we know is going to happen next? It's going to get light again. It always does. It's the phases of the moon. And if it doesn't, witchcraft. Witchcraft. So anyway, the opening of doors is under the power of the moon. Things to do with causing and calming storms. So Hecate is earth, sea, and sky. She is the source of earthquakes. She is the source of thunderstorms. She is the source of huge waves in the sea, right? She is the storminess of the sea. She is Artemis's arrows, her darts. She is that. She is the one that causes all the storms. When we get to the pinnacles, it's all about storm management. It's not all about that, but basically it's about storm management. She provides travel protections, because transitions, she rules over the transitions of manifestation. And when she's watching over you, she's basically doing for you what she does for Persephone on her path down to hell. She provides protection. Oh, by the way, she's armed with a sword. One of her devices is a sword, and she murders people with it. So she's not just there to protect you and guide you so that you don't get caught kind of person. She's there to kill anything that stands in your way. And you've also got Hermes at your side. Her image is one of her animals is the heron. Is why you're going to see lots of herons as we go through this. She provides protection from and learning about the poisons and pharmakeia. Witchcraft to Greeks was pharmakeia. It was about hallucinogens. It was about poisons. It was about healing herbs, and it was about killing people and driving people crazy with herbs. Right, so they found all these different herbs, like aconite. Medea was really well known for, or maybe no, it was Hecate. In the story of Hecate as the grandmother of, or mother of Medea and Circe, she is known for being this witch who used her powers to trap Selene and learn the mysteries of poisons and toxins and the herbal manipulations and spellcraft of making things. Back before Hecate, it was Metis. Metis was the goddess of witchcraft and cunning and the knowledge of herbs and how they are interacting. But here it's Hecate is the goddess of witchcraft, and she's the one that understands all the herbal and all these tables and charts that we put together from Agrippa with herbs and planets and stones and animals and stuff. She's the one that provides that information. Learning about occult properties of anything, stone, plant, metal, animal, or person. She provides that. Also commonness, because the moon rules over the outermost edges of things, like our skin and our like the colors of things, like that essence of things. She is the media of commonality between all of us. Like what you see is what you get. What you see is actually what the moon gave you to present to other people so that they can see what they think they're getting, but they can interpret what they want to interpret when they look at you. That image of ourself that we project into other people is ruled by Venus. She is the common interface that we present to the world, right? So she represents the commonness of things. She represents the commonness of stones. She represents the common use of stones. So like if you have I don't know, something that has some kind of precious stone on it, however you use that thing, or if it's a fork and you use it to eat, she represents that eatingness of it. So that's where that rolls in. Yeah. So let's see. She makes people pleasant and amiable. One of the things that all of her ritual, or not all of her, but one of the things that some of her talismans that you can create are good for is getting people to like you and getting you to yes be on your side, and basically it's manipulating people to like you and get their favor. She's removes evil, heals and protects from diseases, common colds, the flu, COVID. She is there for you. She is the vaccine. When you go to get the vaccine, that's Artemis, that's Hecate, healing you and protecting you from evil by destroying the things that you don't want to have in your body. That's what vaccines are. That's what medicine is. That's what the pharmakeia, pharmacopoeia, pharmacy is there for us. She is Hecate. She's not just a witchcraft herby spell thing. She's also a pharmacy chemist putting shit together to heal our bodies. She is Merck, and she is Pfizer, and she is the scientists who are developing the next level of medications that will slow down the aging of our cells. She is part and parcel of all of that science. She's not just some rustic redneck, Mary Sally Joe whatever from Patuxent. She's actually knows her crap. She's where we go to learn. She's at that level of wisdom. Anyway, she can help you remove any kind of evil, right? So she is on top of all that. Anything that's coming against you, any maliciousness. Increase and decrease a thing by tying it to the moon. So if you're trying to make something manifest, you can call on her in her phase of the moon, and basically whatever you're tying to her in that moment is tied to that waxing and waning of that cycle of the moon. So if you want something to happen in the next 28 days, figure out when you do it, when you're going to be in the waning phase, and you plant your seeds during the new moon, and you watch them grow into being until the full moon, and then they should be materializing a couple weeks later. So that's how you work with the moon and the new moon to materialize things. If you want to have a material manifestation of something, that's what you tie it to, and you have a 2-week cycle, and then right away whether you worked or not. You're not waiting like months and months. And like I had somebody tell me the other day, I did a ritual for them like years and years ago. They were like, I paid you to do a ritual for me, and it just now manifested. I'm like, no, it did not, sir. That was no, you got 2 weeks. If you don't see the results of your magic in 2 weeks, it's not working, and that's just common sense. So and that doesn't mean that you just stop, by the way. It means you try something else. You go back to Hecate and you get more wisdom, and you conjure the spirits of the air so that you can learn the information, so that you can figure out how to do it better. You improve yourself because you're trying to affect change. And if you're trying to affect change that isn't working, you need to figure out if either you're wrong or you're doing it wrong. And if you're wrong, you need to fix yourself. And if you're doing it wrong, you need to fix your process. And it's all about making that creation. Yeah. So anyway, you can tie the increase and decrease of a thing to the cycle of the moon. If you're trying to get rid of things, you tie it to the waning moon, right? If you're trying to manifest things, you tie it to the waxing. I might have said waning earlier. I'm sorry. Wrong word. But it's all of that. But it's also lunacy. It's also the taking things too far and being a little bit fringy and a little bit murky at the edges, not always knowing what the clear lines are. Here in the occult world, we are always walking in the realms of the astral realm, and it's really easy to get trapped in that. I tried to talk about it earlier, and I don't know why I wasn't able to communicate it very effectively. But the ensnaring spirits, the negative aspect of Venus, I'm sorry, of the moon, is when she's going to grab hold of us and distract us, and we're going to get confused between what we want to be true and what really is true, right? And that's the thing. You have to trust her light to shine you to the right path. She'll be telling you the truth. And the way that manifests for me is I get these dreams where I know what I'm supposed to be doing and I'm not doing it in the dream. All right. So if I'm having dreams that I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing, that's always a communication from my HGA or Hecate or Skirlin or whatever spirits I'm working with to materialize through my dreams, communication that I need to hear about things. So in summary, the moon is the final gate that an idea passes through on its way down to the material world. It's also the first sphere that we enter into when we begin the process of our own initiations and our transformations and our ascension through the spheres so that we can return in power. I don't know if you caught it, but I had a video out there about the Emerald Tablet of Hermes as a path of initiation for Hermetic magicians. It's free on my YouTube channel. Please take a look at it if you haven't yet. It sort of embodies like how I see the great work as a process of this ascending through the spheres and then returning in power to create our world. The moon is that first gate that we pass through as we ascend, and the last gate that we pass through as we return. And she is very much the goddess of the threshold when we are performing the magic. So working with her is key to a great deal of understanding. She rules mystery, magic, and the unknown. She's also light, revealing the unknown, revealing the things that are mysterious, revealing the things that you'd want to stay hidden, right? She's also so anything that people don't want you to know is ruled by Venus. By the moon as well. So if you have information that you're trying to get a hold of that you just can't wrap your brain around, or you can't seem to, that where people actually are going to benefit from not sharing with you, you can always ask her for ways to get to it. Like, even if she can't provide you with the information directly, she can give you a path to it, you know. She gets beaten up in her myths by Typhon. She gets scarred by Typhon. She's not invincible, you know. She suffers as from the Thessalonian witches who are calling her down and using her blood for their rituals. She is not invincible, but she is inevitable, like the tides. You know, she is separate from the earth. She is untouchable from here. She cannot be, I mean, you can draw her down for a minute, but you cannot deny her inevitability, right? So she is one of the all-powerful forces, one of the omnipotent forces of the material world. She is unstoppable in her waxing, and she is unstoppable in her waning. There's no part of your life that you cannot remove through the powers of the moon. In Christianity, one of the things I always liked about the teachings there was this idea of what you loose in heaven is loosed on earth, and what you bind in heaven is bound on earth. And this concept of as above, so below, and the expression of your will in both is part of what Hecate represents here. You know, she is that inevitable waning of everything bad that you don't like in your life, and she is also the inevitable waxing of everything good that you want to manifest. So tapping into her eternal omnipotence is something that you can, once you get the hang of that cycle of constantly moving in time with her cycles, you can change your experience of almost everything. You know, it's almost like if you're in a relationship with a woman who is still menstruating on a regular basis, you pick up the rhythm of the cycle, and you adapt your experiences. You know what to expect in your experiences, and you learn the how to interact with all the different things that are going on. Because like in a relationship, the pheromones, for example, are just this chemical mess that goes on that changes like every aspect of everybody involved in any kind of interpersonal relationships. And that's also ruled by Hecate, of course, right? So once you start being in tune with the cycles of manifestation and materialization, you reach this harmony, this vibrance, a resonance with everything else that's in existence. And I'm not saying you're like that all the time. It's not like I've achieved anything and I'm once and done. In the same way that everything comes into being and fades away, your own enlightenment and your own understanding and experience of existence, your good times and your bad times are going to come and go in the same way as everything else, but when you're in tune with this whole manifestation of things, like even if you find that you've forgotten, it's really easy to remember again. It's part and parcel of this whole process. So let's see, the practical magic of the moon. This is going back to those pinnacles from the Key of Solomon. There are only 5, I believe, on this one. The primary one is, or the first one is the one that has the names of the spirits on them. For this sphere, for some reason, for these pinnacles, the primary key is not a wheel. The other ones are circles with staves in them that indicate sort of what the powers are that they represent. But the 4 spirits on this seal are shown on a key, and I don't have any pictures of them. I'm sorry, I apologize for that. But they're in the workbook if you've got the workbook. But the one that you engrave as the primary spirit controlling pinnacle of the moon is shaped like a key from 3rd century. So it's actually like it's a key of the doorway. So it goes back to Cleiaduce. Hecate is one of her epithets as Cleiaduce, the key bearer, that key bearer to the gateway of hell, right? So even in these Key of Solomon talismans, we're finding indicators of Hecate's power as the gatekeeper, right? And it's through her power as the gatekeeper that these 4 spirits are able to materialize things. So I might be visited by my cat here momentarily. Okay, let's see, where was I? All right, so the other aspects of the pinnacles and how they can be used as magicians, you can use them to control the weather. There's one that causes rain. Another one keeps you safe during rain. You can use it for dreams to receive communications, and just like the cults that we talked about earlier, you can receive dreams and answer to your oracles. Or if you just write down your questions on a piece of paper and put it under your pillow, you can receive the answer to these in your dreams with a simple prayer to Hecate before you go to bed. Hecate, reveal to me whatever's on that paper in a dream. Thank you. It's really that simple. And anyway, but you can also use these talismans to tap into that. Insight, you can understand situations better using these talisman. There's one for glamours, so that people see you the way you want them to see you and give you the honors and benefits that come along with that. They are very useful for astral magic. And anything that you can imagine is made more powerful with these talismans. And this is going to sound really ridiculous, and maybe it is, but you're going to run into magicians who are petty, and they're into this astral magic stuff, and it doesn't bother you once you've gotten into like your solar initiations, because the light of the sun burns away the fog of the moon every time. It's really not something that you have to worry about. But on your way to the sun, you can run into some really crazy people when you first start getting into this magic. And before you learn discernment, you get a lot of interesting, fun experiences. Do be careful with all that stuff. But yeah, so just like I'm gonna send out a copy of what I wrote. I wrote this book called The Astral Warrior Handbook, and it's I read it very tongue-in-cheek. I wrote it very tongue-in-cheek, but it has some real basic astral magic guidelines that are, I think, are fun to think about. And it was please don't take it too seriously. It's take it with large grains of salt. But the actual techniques that are presented within the story of what I presented in that piece, it's more of a commentary on magicians than anything else. But the actual techniques are effective, and I've used them, all of them, in very petty ways myself. So it's just kind of fun stuff. Let's see. Do be careful of getting ensnared in the material realm traps. The there are a lot of traps in the material world that can be distracting along the way. And a lot of people are working against you and they don't want to see you succeed. And I know that sounds paranoid, but just a sad fact of reality that sometimes there are forces set against you that need to be confused and redirected through the powers of the moon so that you can continue to materialize and manifest things according to your schedule within the month, over the next coming months. You need to work with the moon to tap into this kind of thing. And I say that, but I couldn't tell you what phase of the moon what we're in right now. So like everything else, take those grains of salt. On the devotional side of things, when you start doing the initiations into the sphere, so the moon is one of the first ones you want to go to. You release in the sphere of the moon your negativity, the negativity of any falsehoods, basically all the lies that people have told you, the lies you've told yourself, all the negativity of deceit, any deceits that you've engaged in or that you've been the victim of are revealed when you first begin these initiations. So there can be some trying times for some people, especially if they're like real pieces of actual shit, and I'm not saying this in a judgmental way, but realistically, people who are evil to one another and have been for a while, if you ever change your mind and you want to get right and you start working on these initiations, you start seeing things about yourself that you don't like anymore, and you have to change, and you have to understand where that came from. And it's a painful process, but most people aren't like that. Most people don't have this kind of problem when they start doing these initiations. A lot of us have been through some really terrible crap in our lives, but most people have not been. And most of the stuff that we think has been really terrible is not really all that bad. I think getting a little bit of perspective on things is very valuable, and the bigger your understanding of the universe and your part in it that you play as a magician, the bigger the person that you are as a person within the backdrop of everything else, the smaller the little things that happen to you on a day-to-day basis become. Realistically, if I lose my job today, it's not the end of the world the way it would have been when I didn't have an understanding of the process of manifestation the way I do right now. Right? I am manifesting things. It's great. I've decided at this point in my life that I'm going to use all of the magic that I've learned to create basically just a good time, like to have a positive experience of my existence between now and when I die, and create positive experiences for everybody else. I've decided that that's what I'm going to use my magic for the rest of my life. And I am having a really good time. I am enjoying every aspect of my life, my relationships, my friendships, my work is going great. I work at a company that is a part of the pharmaceutical environment. I'm working in pharmakeia, you guys. I'm doing my will in ways that are amazing. And I'm looking at my company, and there's like, if I had a high school diploma and I was just starting out, I could work my way up in this company because there's a ladder of success built into the business culture in America that can be grabbed by just about anyone that wants it, that is willing to make the sacrifices that are necessary to be a part of that. And it's a shitty system, just for the record. It's very capitalistic, but it's there, and just like any system, a mercurial magician, a hermetic magician, can understand how the process works and how to use that to accumulate things in a positive way and change things for the better for yourself and for other people around you. And why not? Why not do something good? And this is coming from someone who lived a crappy life on purpose for fun, right? I used to be a really just a bad person. I don't like who I used to be. I changed, and I like how things are going. And I'm finding out that if I had to start over today, with everything that I know now, I know a lot. You know, you do too. If you followed along with all these classes, you know a lot now about how it all works. This thing that we know how to do, it's amazing. And we can use it for whatever we want, you know. And I'm not saying we have the power to change every aspect of everything. We work as a team. There's constraints to everything, you know. But we're not as limited as everyone else. And that's the bottom line. And it's not because we're special. We're not more special. We just have more knowledge because of Hecate, because of our witchcraft, because of our occult interests, our pursuits, our work, our initiations. You know, we've turned that light of intelligence and intellect on ourselves, and we've accepted that there are things about ourselves that we don't like and we're going to change. And it's not that big of a deal because actually we want to be something different because it's fun, because it's good and it feels nice. You know, we can do that if we want to, right? It's I don't know. I just think it's a useful thing that is very much something that we go through in our processes. The reason we go through these initiations, it's so that we can actually claim our birthright. So we can actually be fully human. You know, we integrate these lunar forces, right? So integrating lunar forces, changing shapes, being able to lose weight, being able to gain weight, being able to gain muscle if you want to gain muscle, being able to do plastic surgery if you want to do plastic surgery, you know, being able to morph your body, being able to morph your mind, being able to soften your brain cells using mushrooms and whatnot, you know, taking your pills, seeing your therapist, being a part of all this stuff, you know, changing the shape of things, changing the image that you project to other people, changing the way you look at other people, seeing a different image, right? This isn't your power. This is your power. You control the image that you present and the image that you receive. You don't control every aspect of it, but you can control how that realm in between, that liminal space, is going to be impacting you personally and what impact you're going to have on it, because it's a cycle of manifesting and unmanifesting, and you understand that now, and you're able to do things with it that other people aren't going to be able to do, you know. And understanding that and toning, getting yourself attuned to the tones of that sphere, you know, it reveals things about yourself. You know, it reveals the things in the darkness that you need to understand, that drive you, that make you do things, that help you do things, that pull you forward towards what you want when they're aimed the right way, right? Ambition is great. Greed is not great. You know, greed for greed's sake is not great. Greed for positive experiences, awesome, right? Turning those things around, that's all part of the moon. Manifesting and unmanifesting, manifesting something in a different way, unmanifesting things that you don't want anymore, you know, internally and externally, your internal world and this external world around you. You know, that's our world, right? It's our experience. So you're going to understand more about yourself, and you're going to have really vivid dreams. And not everybody does. Everybody does not. I have friends who cannot dream. They have a brain thing. They just don't have dreams. And it's bullshit. They do too have dreams. Okay. They just cannot remember them. But I've seen them sleep, and I've seen their eyes move back and forth, and they're going through physiologically the processes of having a dream. They just are not going to remember it ever in their lives. That sucks. But, you know, maybe that can change with the application of certain pharmaceuticals. You know, you can maybe hallucinate while you're awake and have an experience of the dream that you can't have in your sleep, or that you can't remember in your sleep. You know, what I'm saying is the ability to dream is something that you have as a result of your initiation into this sphere. Okay. You actually learn how to dream again, how to embrace your own dreams. different methods of actually performing this devotional magic. Jason Miller's course with the Tantra stuff that he does, I have mixed feelings about it. I think that it's great though. I mean, at the end of the day, it's awesome because I've seen it work. It is very, very, very effective. It's incredibly practical, and it teaches something about uh, the structure of the gods and goddesses that control manifestation, that is incredibly useful. Okay. His cosmology of Hecate, his expression of the court of Hecate, of spirits that work with Hecate, his expression of the ways to interact with them, the practices that he recommends, the timings that he has you do, the whole cycle of the seasons that you end up being in tune with as a result of integrating all the things that he provides you with and it's obvious to me that he did not come up with this on his own. This is all stuff from the goddess herself. And this he's told me how he got the revelation of it, and I understand where he's coming from and why he waited so long to do it. But it's an incredible thing, and my wife is a participant in that kind of thing, and other people I know are into that kind of thing, and I can't recommend it enough because it's very effective, and there are people who have problems with it, but whatever. It's just it's a very useful way of doing things. It can be all encompassing. I'm not into I don't want to believe anything that much. I don't. It's a lot of work. I if you're the devotional type though, that is a devotional path. I like Zeus because it's he's in my cells, man. I can feel him in me. I don't have to observe times and places and all that stuff. I'm very chaotic that way. I'm a Parisian at heart, so I just I'm not gonna remember to do a particular rite every single night for the rest of my life, or else I can't do it. Anyway, Wiccan and neo-pagan rites, study the calendar. So like the whole Sabbath, the Sabbats, the whole cycle of the seasons, the Horai, from spring to winter, all the way through the path of Persephone, to the underworld and back up that we see in the seasons, right? That as above, so below, that we see that ascension of the soul itself into the highest heavens, and the descent back down into the lowest hells, that descent of hope and the ascent of hope, right? And Persephone herself, life, the joy of life, right? Moving from the joy of life as it's expressed in the dark side of things, and the joy of life as it's expressed in the dark and the bright side of things. That whole process, it's incredible what you can learn just by studying the seasons. So study the Wiccan stuff, study the neo-pagan studies, right? These are all stuff that people with master's degrees put together based on their studies of history, right? They aren't idiots, they weren't fools that put all that stuff together. What they came up with was ridiculous in its application sometimes by some people. But everything can be made fun of by someone, right? I mean, we're all foolish entities. So study the calends. There's a lot of useful information in materials that are written by modern neo-pagans. Daily prayer to Hecate, or to Zeus, or to I'm sorry, we should be talking about the moon. You can do daily devotionals to the moon. Archery is a great way to get in touch with Hecate. I've been doing archery with my wife for the last 2 years or so, and we went shooting today. In fact, it was a great time. It's a great way to get out of the house and shoot bows and arrows and learn how to focus your mind and your body together. Any kind of service to the cause, because this is a joint effort that we're on. We're all working together on this stuff. The whole materialization process. So the process of manifestation has its own team of people who teach the world about how it works, and we try to talk other people into doing it. It's sort of like a multi-level marketing thing. we try to make other people become magicians because it's what we think people should do. All right, we serve the cause. We pass on this hermetic information. We teach, we coach, we talk at the water cooler, we give people advice over IMs, we help people with their family issues in Japan, that we met on Facebook. We do silly things. We take flowers out to crossroads and we drop them off. We do ridiculous things with our lives. But what we do is service. Okay. Why does Helios drive his cart across the sky? Why does Selene drive her cart across the sky? She fell in love with Endymion. All she wanted to do was spend time with him. She forsake her duties for Endymion because of love and passion. She felt like a fool. She made fun of herself all through the Odyssey for falling in love with Endymion. She felt ridiculous falling in love, but she couldn't constrain herself. But why does she do all that? Why does she not just go and hang out with Endymion all the time? Because she has a service that she provides. She manifests the things she represents all the time. She is the moon goddess. She is goddessing all the time, and she's doing it right now, right? And we have to do that too. Like I'm Rufusing right now, I'm joshing you. I'm joshing you with every word. And that's what we do, is we serve the cause, right? In whatever capacity we can. And that's something that comes with, that becomes a holy rite. That is your clerical duty, marials and burials. You marry people, you bury people, you serve the community. And you do that by being the psychopomp. When someone dies, you pray for them so that they go to hell, in the right part of hell where they belong, or to heaven, whatever you want to call it. You psychopomp people. You help your goddess by manifesting what she is. You help Hermes be Hermes in the material world. You do that, and that's your service, and that's a devotion, right? And just doing magic, just making yourself rich, is service to the cause. Okay, you are working with the gods to help them do their jobs, right? If you are Hecate, come forth, far shooter. If you can influence things from afar, torchbearer. If that's you who walks beside Persephone every season, if that's you, Selene, mother of the seasons, if that's you, Mine, month, come forward and help me out with this. You're helping her do that. You're giving her that opportunity, right? By calling on her, you're expressing that aspect of deity as a cleric, a priest or priestess, a clerk of that force on the earth. You're doing something there. That's your service. That's your devotion to your God, right? So do your magic. Always do your magic. That's service to the cause. I wanted to give you some personal anecdotes. I think I've done that throughout the whole thing, and I want to talk about the Astral Warriors Handbook, and that's what I got for that particular slide. So where were we? I've lost my mouse. There we go. Luna in our experienced world. So in the human being, the parts of the body that are ruled by the moon, it basically, she rules the whole body. She's part of everything. She rules the water in our cells, the fluid in our eyeballs, the every part of us that has liquid that allows lightning to pass through it in our cell structure. That's all Luna. She's there ruling over it. She influences every part of it. But in particular, the brain, the lungs, the marrow of the backbone, the stomach, anything that is an excrement, anything that flows through us, our tears, our snot, our saliva, earwax, skin oil, everything, urine and feces, etc., etc., semen and menses. I think I got everything right. Sweat. That's it. All the gross stuff. That's part of manifesting and unmanifesting. It's just how it goes. And the left eye. So in the inner world, she governs the powers of increasing and decreasing in your emotions, right? So the part of your emotions that gets out of hand, the getting out of hand part is what she rules. The falling in love, the falling out of love, the grieving process, the process of acceptance, the process of denial, the process of establishing boundaries, the establishment of a boundary. That's her, the increasing and the decreasing of your emotional uh, quality, um, quantity, all that change of state is what she's going to rule. The inner sense is touching. When you touch something, your outermost form is touching the other outermost form, and you can feel it. You know, if you rub your hands together, you can feel the ridges of your fingerprints. You know, it's part of what you can feel. That's touching. That's the moon. The divine gift of the moon, a peacemaking consonancy, the ability to harmonize things, a fecundity, right? The ability to generate things and make things grow greater and increase and decrease, and a moderate temperance, right? Because you know that sooner or later things are going to happen. You're not in a big rush to get things done. I'm not there yet, by the way, you guys. I'm just, for the record, I'm working on it, especially with driving. I am not a great driver, and I am not pretending I am. But yes, so the moon is the ruler over moderate temperance, you know, being patient. Faith, being conversant and manifest in occult. So knowing that your magic works, right? A little bit of confidence. In my Zeus practices, I call that metis, the sense of confidence that you know that everything that you say is being heard by a whole freaking army of spirits waiting to do your bidding, you know, like acting like you have a billion minions just waiting to do your will. I mean, that's sort of being conversant and manifest in occult things, that and yielding direction to all, right? So you're granting them the grace of your guidance and performing their acts. It's so nice of you, I must say. So remember that you're doing the world you're doing the world a fucking favor by telling it what to do, for fuck's sake. You know, so you got to remember that about your magic. Let's see, where were we? Also, motion to the tilling of the earth for the manner of life and giving growth to itself. So, like how you actually process the things of this world, so that other people can grow. You know, the phrase "bullshit makes the flowers grow" comes to mind. You know, and how you actually make sure that the bullshit is there for other people's flowers to grow, and it's in the right proportions and the right pharmakeia. You know, the mixture of elements, so that it can manifest what you want. Tractable complexion, proportion and tempered for every good thing. So basically you learn how things manifest and you become a decent human being about things. Basically you can tell somebody who's like ruled by the moon, because they do tend to be movable, poisonful, and childish and the like. And if you know any cancers, you know what I'm talking about. No offense, cancers. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But they can be very moody, and you think you understand one thing about them, but really you don't understand anything about them, because they're much deeper than that. You think you'd understand what they've revealed, but you only understand what they've revealed, and you don't know what they haven't revealed. They're movable, they're poisonful. Why is it poisonous? Because you don't know that you're being dosed. And so you get either too much or too little and you die. So they can be childish. Children are in that transitional state where they just don't always, I mean, even though she rules over the transition of ignorance to knowledge and that understanding of everything, there is a whole phase that she rules where you're just a freaking moron, you know, and it's just the cutest little moron, the nicest little moron, but the dumbest little thing is what you are. And you stay dumb for a little while. And then you know, she's there for you to help you with your dumbness. It is what it is. The way somebody looks, if they look like the person of the moon, they will be pale, a little bit of red, like blotchy. Irish people, the way Irish people are typically depicted as being like pale skinned and sunburnt, for example. I don't know, a little red, of fair stature, round face with some marks in it, eyes not fully black. Good thing my eyes aren't black. Frowning forehead, and also kind, gentle, and sociable. So I'm kind, gentle, and sociable. And if you look at my forehead, I've got the Sharpay thing going on. So that's, I think, what they're talking about. I don't know if that's true or not, but it just makes sense to me. So in the physical world, when we conjure things of the moon, we need the incense that is made of pretty much anything that's a vegetable incense is ruled by the moon. So like I don't know what the leaf endem is, but like tobacco, for example, is ruled by the moon. The leaves of myrtle and bay leaf, definitely bay leaf and laurel. Is always the go-to for the moon. You can burn it. You can you don't have to burn it, but you can like you can steam it. You can use bay leaf essential oil is really good for cleansing things. You can use it as an offering to the gods. Myrtle and what was the other one? Oh my god, it grows everywhere. Mullein, I think it's called mullein. It's like you could it has like almost like a phallic looking top to it, and different colors, and dries out, and you can dip it in wax and anoint it with Hecate's oils and pray on it, and it becomes like a candle for Hecate, and you burn that, and it's one of her torches, right? And it's like well known, I guess. It's a mullein, I think it's called, but that's one of her herbs, and you can find that pretty much anywhere. When you're phrasing your statements of intent, the things you want to call on are basically any of her gods, like god names like Phoebe, Diana, Lucina, Proserpine. So they actually, and this is all from Agrippa, by the way. Proserpina, they actually recommend calling her by that. I didn't know that. Hecate, menstruous, having a half form. So it goes on, and it basically describes all the different aspects of her different myths that they want to tap into to call upon her. For her epithets, so Selene didn't have very many epithets, but Artemis and Hecate had a ton, and they're all in the workbook. But the ones I really want to talk about, like Jack Grail had the whole book on Hecate and her epithets. It's really incredibly good in the Hecateon. Jason Miller's course teaches about the epithets. If you go to theoi.com, you can learn about the epithets for yourself, and you can conjure the goddess and ask her, and she will teach you everything that you want to know. If you want to look up her epithets in the Greek magical papyri, there are searchable versions online and PDF forms. You can use those to track down the different aspects of her in her manifest forms. But if you want a system, there's the Jason Miller course. If you want a book, there's the Jack Grail book. But pretty soon, I'm hoping that B.J. Swain finishes his work with her so that we can see another voices interpretation of her forces in the world. Let's see. So these epithets in particular are going to focus on just the aspects of her that I work with personally. Selene, I don't have the epithets in front of me. I'm sorry, but the ones that mean gleam or radiance. Selene, the all shining, Selene who brings aid and relief in childbirth. Those are the aspects of Selene that you would call upon. For Artemis, Artemis of the Hunt. I'm going to skip the Kordax dance for a minute. The worker from afar, it's the Hecate, again, worker from afar, of showering arrows, right? So the falling meteors, and with shafts of gold. Again, the meteors are always a golden, or not always, but they were often a golden yellow color in the night sky. And you can't tell that these days, it sucks because of the light pollution, but hopefully that goes away. So anyway, the Kordax dance. Artemis is she's the goddess of dance in general, and she leads the other goddesses and the muses in dance. So Artemis, she would dance in the moonlight in the hills when she was in her crazy phase. So she was the goddess of the Kordax dance, and the Kordax dance was recorded by one of these stodgy historians from the city in these Greek things. And the Kordax dance was basically a priestess of Artemis would twerk. And they describe her falling to the ground and clenching her buttocks down into the earth. And basically she was like squatting and twerking. And they were describing the twerking of the goddess, and that's called the Kordax dance. So if you ever want to imagine Artemis twerking, you can go with the goddess of the Kordax dance. I don't know whether or not that would be I just thought it was great to find out that she was twerking. And of Hecate, the main ones are of the crossroads, I've Night Wandering of the Underworld, Leader of the Dogs, Bright Quaft, and Queen of Those Below. Those are the ones that I'm not actually that familiar with. So I thought they were interesting to bring up. But again, all these different things represent aspects of their myths or their abilities, and they're all things that we would want to call upon to manifest their forces in our life. The hymns to the sphere, I've included the Orphic hymn to Selene, the Orphic hymn to Artemis, and the Orphic hymn to Hecate here. I'm not going to read through them, but basically you can work with any of those three, depending on which aspect of the moon you want to work with. When you're doing your devotional prayers and you want to actually get to know her, I recommend doing a Monday morning ritual where you just pray each one of these, not either all together or if you have the time, but definitely one, and then the next week the next, and then the next week the next, and then get to know each aspect of her, because she is a triformed goddess. The goddess of the moon has three forms, and it is the integration of different goddesses across time in Greece, but they also represent true forces of what we experience, the forces of the moon, when we work with her as magicians. They aren't just stories, they are actually it's like descriptions of ingredients for chefs, so that we understand how the seasonings work together when we put together our final meals for our clients. What we're doing here, what we're creating with our magic, is an experience based on yeah, our interpretations of these multiple facets of this one entity. So yeah, you got to learn all three different versions. For ceremonialists, the Hebrew name of God for this sphere is Shaddai. Shaddai Elkai is how I learned it when I was a Christian, but the name Shaddai is associated with the sphere of Yesod. Yesod is the sphere on the tree of life that is associated with the moon. It's the foundation, it's the base of the tree of life. It's where all the other spheres have branches going off from the moon up into either the sun or what was it, Venus or Mercury. There's a ray going in off to every planet from the moon, because everything has a path back to it. So that's Yesod on the tree of life. The name is Shaddai Elkai, right? So Shaddai, that is omnipotent and satisfying all, and Elkai, which is the living God. So omnipotent living God. So that force that is eternal and all powerful, that is materializing. That's that inevitability again of the lunar force, which is the living God, the God of life, the nourishing nectar or dew that Selene provides. His numeration is Yesod, that is foundation. That's like the foundation of everything, is that glamour sphere in between here and there. It signifies a good understanding, a covenant, a redemption, and a rest, right? This agreement between the unmanifest and the manifest. And it has an influence through the order of the angels. So we call upon the angels when we're working with Gabriel. Gabriel is the archangel of this. The choir is the cherubim, and yeah, taketh care of the genii and keepers of men. So according to Agrippa, every human being has a genius assigned to them that you can find the name of in their natal chart, and he tells you how to find out their natal name. And I can actually figure that out for people if they want me to do that. If you ping me, I will charge you money, but if somebody wants me to figure out their names for their things, I have a spreadsheet for that, but I have to run a chart and all this stuff. But basically, you get your natal chart, and you can figure out based on your high legs what the name of your spirit is, and then you add IEL or AH to the end to get either the active or the passive form. But you get a 5-letter base name for your genius spirit, but they are ruled by Gabriel, the archangel of the moon. So they're basically the equivalent of your holy guardian angel, by the way. That's I will teach that in my tutelary spirit class, that the HGA and the tutelary spirit, the genius or the of the natal chart, or the natal angel of the oh my god, it's in the Lemegaton, the natal angel thing. I can't remember which book it's from, but whatever it is, this entity, this supernatural assistant from the Greek magical papyri that you get, the solar assistant, the holy guardian angel, whatever you want to call it. This entity is basically a if it's ruled by Gabriel, the archangel of the moon, it's basically of Yesod. It's an astral projection for this helper assistant that is all wise, all powerful, and able to help you connect to other spirits, right? Your magician's assistant. You're basically your incredibly powerful, awesome, familiar spirit who's going to also be teaching you what you need to learn to be able to do things, right? So these are all under the power of this astral world. So all these things that we're experiencing with this astral entity, it's really all just it's an astral entity, all these experiences with these spirits, it's all just up in the mind. It's up in the astral world. It's not people like I've read these descriptions of people who conjured Satkiel of Jupiter, and they're talking about the wings of the angels filling the room, and I've had that experience. I felt like that's what was going on, and I saw it in my mind's eye, but it wasn't happening the way they were describing it. And they're talking about things falling off the wall, and I've seen things fall off the wall, during ritual, but it doesn't happen every time. And if it does, it's kind of neat, but it's not. I don't know. It just seems like presenting that as like the expectation is inappropriate in my opinion. But basically all these things are happening in our mind's eye, is what I'm trying to say. It's our impression of things and our interpretation of events and symbols and images that pop into our heads while we are meditating, contemplating, calling on and evoking these spirits and communicating with them, either hopefully out loud using our words, but also with our minds and our intentions and our expectations to receive a response. Let's see. So it does talk in the book. It'll talk more about the different ways to work on those different names to conjure the spirits using the different names of the spirits. For the tables of the planets of the moon, I did not include the images of those, but they're in the book. But for the tables of the planets of the moon, what they were used for specifically, the fortunate moon being engraven in silver renders the bearer thereof grateful, amiable, pleasant, cheerful, honored, removing all malice and ill will. So this is the aspect of the moon that actually cures you from all evils that can afflict you. Another one, and this is by doing, and when I say this is where you engrave on a plate of silver the numbers on that grid, and you trace out on the grid the seals of the spirits, the intelligences, the spirits, and the symbol for the planet itself. You trace those out on the table, on the silver table, a little square piece of silver or silver plated square something. You engrave on it that symbol. And when you do that, it will result in basically when you carry it or somebody else carries it, people will be pleasant to that person. They'll just be nice to them. It's just a way of getting convenient niceties and having people treat you with a little bit of friggin' dignity, a little bit of respect, and it gets rid of ill will and people who are like having a bad day, just expecting and taking it out on you. It just gets rid of that aspect of things. It also helps to cause security in your journey. Again, it covers travel, it increases your riches, right, and health, and it actually drives away enemies and other evil things. If you make it at a bad time of the moon, like when the moon is afflicted, like anywhere when it's conjunct to anything like evil, like Scorpio or I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Anyway, if the moon is in a bad sign or if it's in a sign that doesn't represent what you want the talisman to do, it's going to be an unfortunate moon. And if you engrave it then in lead instead of silver, wherever it's buried, it'll make the place cursed. Basically, it curses the place, and then all kinds of bad luck happens there. And if you give it to someone, it makes them fly away from their country, and if you bury it under a place, it'll drive someone away from that place. And it hinders physicians and orators and all men whatsoever in their office against whom it shall be made. So if you have a favorite politician that you want to use it against, you would engrave it in lead at a time where the moon was misfortuned, and you would aim it and dedicate it to that particular politician. When you conjure the spirits, they can come across looking, for me, they actually come across looking like angels. It's great, like wings and white robes and long hair and sort of androgynous, leaning towards masculine features. It's kind of nice. But I've also had images where I was being carried on the back of a bull, and I felt the bull leaning back and forth as I was riding on it. But yeah, anything like that, like a wild boar, any pigs or large wild animals that reflect the consuming and manifesting and decreasing aspects of the moon. And anytime you have like a vision of a spirit that arrives with a vision of a storm or a tempest or a bunch of rain, it definitely represents a lunar spirit. If you see a spirit that looks like a king with an archer riding on a doe, or a spirit that just looks like a little boy, or a woman hunter with a bow and arrows, we're looking a little bit like Artemis maybe, or a cow, or a little doe, or a goose, or a garment green or silver colored. Like even if you just see like a sweater, a green sweater. The best time to wear a green sweater is all the time. So or if you just see an arrow or a creature having many feet, these can all be indicating that the spirit represents something of the moon. The image of the talismans, a woman riding seven-headed dragon, is one of these images that pops up. She is cornuted riding on a bull or a dragon with 7 heads, or a crab, and she hath in her right hand a dart and in her left a looking glass. Midjourney did not do a great job with that part. Clothed in white or green and having on her head 2 servers with horns twined about him, and to each arm and such and such and such. But basically what that was for the increase of the fruits of the earth and against poisons and infirmities of children. And they would just make it on a Monday at the hour of the moon. For operations of the moon, they also made an image for travelers against weariness, figure which was a man leaning on a staff, having a bird on his head and a flourishing tree. Mansions of the moon, I'm not going to get into that. My throat is already very dry, but I might do another class on the mansions of the moon. But basically, Agrippa lists 28 different mansions, and the names of the spirits that rule over them, and the images that they would use to tap into these entities, and the best times that you would actually want to do that. And there's a way to calculate it, and it's a great handy way to do some practical magic. It shows again the sharpness of the whips of the furies that Hecate can deliver through her connections with the underworld. So that's all I had for my actual course. Let me see if I can find my mouse on my monitor here, and I will get to our comments in our chat. Let's see here. Where is it? There it is. Okay. So questions. Let's see what we have today. Okay. Wow, there's a lot. Sorry, I wasn't paying attention to the whole thing. I'm sorry. I was kind of enamored with the sound of my own voice, and I was a little concerned about having missed that one part of it. So, again, sorry about the technical difficulties. Thanks everybody for being able to join me. I do appreciate you being here in spite of my technical issues. But basically, my computer just died. Like I'm sitting here talking to you 1 minute, and then the next minute, all my monitors were dead, and my computer was just. I had to reboot the whole thing, and I don't know exactly what happened, but we've made it through the rest of the class, so great. But anyway, I wanted to apologize about that. Yeah. So, all right. Moon is considered to be afflicted if it receives the aspect of malefic. Yeah, if it receives the aspect of malefic planets or is associated with malefic planets. If the moon is hemmed between malefic planets, the affliction is said to increase. The placement of moon in the 6th, 8th, or the 12th house is also not very welcome. Oh, great. And it is in detriment in Capricorn and the fall in Scorpio. Awesome. Well, thanks for providing that. That's a great wrap up of some of the stuff that can impact the moon in a negative way. These are the things that you would aim for if you're trying to create a lead talisman that does all the negative things that we talked about for that one talisman previously, with the image of the where was it? Oh yeah, the tables of the planets. If you make the table of the planet in lead during one of these times, it would be a great in detriment in Capricorn and fall in Scorpio, or conjunct to either the lesser or greater malefic, so Mars or Saturn, right? And it looks like in the placement in the 6th, 8th, and 12th house. By the way, I am not an astrologer, and you can see like how complicated this is just to find the right time. And you can probably find it in the next couple of weeks. The moon, because she passes through everything every 28 days, sooner or later you're going to find something where some of these things are more likely to be in place than others. And you get a laundry list of everything you're supposed to have, and you check off as many as you can, and some are stronger than others based on people's interpretations of this, that, the other in this time period based on this understanding. And by the way, we couldn't count how many planets there were, and now we counted different numbers. So it's complicated, and it's based on science that has since been passed on, and I have my doubts, but nevertheless it provides a great deal of useful predictive whatever force. So you can always tell what's going to happen if you actually pay attention to this kind of thing. But at the same time, you can also use the fuck it, the bless the fuck out of it method, where you actually call on the intelligences that rule the forces as a magician, talk to them as a friend, and encourage them to work on your behalf in exchange for the offerings that you bring in fire and smoke and smell and attention and direction, and the offering to actually apply their forces to the world. And if you are this torch bearing Hecate, then hear me and respond, and hear me as your friend and help me out. So anyway, that's the kind of thing that, yeah. Anyway, if you wanted to email the others, link from the first class, yeah, I sent those out to people who pinged me. Petition when Luna is waxing. No, petition when Luna is waxing when you want something to materialize. Petition when Luna is waning when you want something to dematerialize. Always petition. always work for those things. When you're doing your magic, follow the light is like my general advice. Always follow the direction of the light being reflected from the moon. So as the moon is waning, you want to turn your attention more directly to spiritual subjects and transformation and initiation. Internalize your focus of your emotions, because when you try to externalize it, you're more likely to be negative when it's waning. This is all theoretical, and these are guidelines. They aren't hard rules. It doesn't always work out this way, but in general, you can kind of use this as a way to understand what's going on in your life and interact with it in different ways. You follow the light of the moon with your magic, and you do internal and transformation magic when the moon is waning, and external manifestation magic, like for a new car, a new job, a new partner, a new life, a new whatever. When you want something to materialize and change in the physical, then you do it in the waxing, right? So on a new moon or near a new moon, you plant your seeds. If it's you want something to go away on a full moon, you cut the ties, you call on Hecate, and you bind the thing to the phase of the moon, so that over the next 2 weeks it decreases. So yes, when engraving and creating talismans, it's really good to focus on your intention while doing it too. Yes, absolutely. Intention. Oh my God, I was watching a stupid freaking cartoon movie the other day. It was the dumbest thing, and it was like these elves talking about magic and relearning how to do magic after elves had lost their magic. It was incredibly bad, like in several ways. But he talks about talking from the heart as a way to activate magic. And it's funny. It was ridiculously in tune with something I was learning about heart chakras from a freaking crystal bowl I've been meditating with, and conjurations of some, I guess, sort of lunar entities. Yeah, but putting all this stuff together is very important. Like you have to speak from your heart And Agrippa talks about how you can picture like the image of a planet and project it through your eyes at other people. My cat's telling me to hurry up here. Anyway, yes, you focus your intention while you're doing your magic, focus your intention while you're conjuring things, focus your intention, speak from your heart, put your emotions, your mind, and your body together in your rituals. Combine these three things in the same way that Hecate is a triple goddess, in the same way that Selene is a triple goddess, and the moon represents this triple aspected Artemis, Selene, Hecate combine, right? Yes, focus all these things together so that earth, sea, and sky work together to manifest your will. Do I get better, stronger, more frequent results from the Greek names versus Hebrew? No, I don't. Nope, absolutely not. I get better, stronger, more frequent results from my emotional states and my focus and my intention. As long as I'm absolutely working on effectively manifesting things, I absolutely go with those things. I have not been using my Hebrew stuff lately because I had some personal experiences with Thelema and the people who practice Thelema, and I didn't feel like doing Hermetic magic that involved Hebrew stuff anymore after that, because it was just sort of left a bad taste in my mouth because I had some PTSD, I guess, or whatever. I don't know. But I wasn't interested in doing that as a spiritual practice anymore. So I've focused more on Greek stuff. I've had to learn how to read this stuff, and it was a pain in the butt, and I didn't like having to do it. But it was I get just as good of results from my Greek as I did with my Hebrew previously. And I have it's one is not better than the other. It's just entirely different dialects, if anything. They're, it's all Middle Eastern stuff, and I hate to say it that way, but we're all humans, and it's just a different language, a different interpretation, a different flavor of the same interface with entities that we don't understand completely, wrapping them in languages of the time and place, and it's just different ways of getting to that. And Celts have their ways, and I have my ways, and whatever. I don't give a crap. It is what it is. The Furies, yeah. We had a few days with the Furies. Biggest block to therapy is not accepting life is a struggle. Absolutely. It's always a struggle, and that's part of existence. Which of these aspects is related to Diana? So Diana is the huntress. Artemis is Diana. So Dianic Wiccans are Artemisian Wiccans, right? They're actually Artemis. Artemis was all the things that Diana, like I have this I want to say second wave feminist version of Diana, where they there were these Wiccans who rejected everything masculine and didn't have any priests in their covens, and it was all women all the time, and no penises allowed at the circle, not even transgender, not even ex post-op, super gynocentric feminist Dianic people, and they embraced Diana as this virgin goddess, right? And so Diana was actually Artemis, and Artemis was a virgin goddess, but she actually she was not. I mean, she's pretty pointy. She definitely has some pointy horns and arrows that she shoots from afar, but she's not entirely evil and does not hate all men. I have a very good relationship with her and her brother. Nothing like that. So I have a question. Could you please chant the Zeus ho Kephale Zeus? Oh, sure. Zeus ho Kephale, Zeus ho Meso, Zeus to Ponto Krator. That's it. Zeus to Ponto Krator. So yes, that's it. Great video by Sarah Mastros on the first pinnacle of the moon. Yeah, actually, she's got a new book coming out on the pinnacles of the moon. I got to review it, and honestly, I'm happy to say that it's very complimentary to everything I've taught in the class, and she confirms everything that I taught. It was really nice to, because I had already been teaching these classes when I reviewed her book, and I was like, oh crap, I really hope that I don't read it and find out that she's telling me I'm doing it wrong, because I've been doing it this way, and it's my own interpretation on things, right? And it turns out that she's reached very similar conclusions conclusions on her own, and in parallel, we've come to the same practices, and it was very pleasing to be I'm congratulating myself on actually hearing the spirit and being accurate in my presentation of my revelation and my experiences, because basically she teaches the same thing that I do, but hers is actually, it's different because she's an actual Jewish person and understands the Hebrew on the talismans and knows what they're supposed to be doing, and it's great. And her understanding of these things is really really deep. I'm looking forward to talking to her about that again on another podcast. When we start the initiation, which sphere should we best start with? The moon. You start on a Monday and on the Monday morning, and then 2 days later you do Mercury, and then 2 days later you do Venus. And it's just simple. Call on the archangel, read the Orphic hymn, and think about things. Think about what you've done with your life, and in each sphere, ask them to take away the negative side. Just like in the moon, remove all deceit. Thank you. Sit and bask and move on. Super subtle stuff, very, very gentle. It'll start getting the forces to flow a little bit. You might have some it's a nice way to get things going, and get in tune with things. Start in the moon, work your way back up, all that stuff. Which alphabet do you use to come up with the name? The Hebrew alphabet is the one that Agrippa teaches to use. You start with Aleph and the 0 degree of Aries, and then you in the next degree you put the bet, and you go through each of the letters of the alphabet, and then you repeat it all the way around, and it perfectly aligns with the 360th degree, and your or 359th. I guess if you start at 0, and you end up right at the end of the Hebrew alphabet, and then in each degree you have a letter of the name, and based on where the high legs are in your chart, you can determine the name of your spirit and what order they go in. So yeah. Could you please do the tutelary spirit course in one payment, please? Yes, absolutely. I will do that. That'll be an awesome class. Maybe the deacons too. I don't know how deacons work. Sorry. I don't even know what a deacon is. It's like 10 degrees. I'm not an astrologer. I have fun with astrology, but I don't know what I'm doing. I use gold. I can't remember what it is. It's like this solar fire gold. Solar fire gold is what I use. It's a really great astrology program, but it tells me everything I need to know. I just plug in the dates and times and where I want it to be looking, and it shows me what's going on and tells me what it means. It's really convenient as a magician, I must say, and it does elections. It's awesome. Yeah. Let's see. I talked about Greek names, then Hebrew. I did not better. It's definitely not better, just different. It's not even different, really. I get the same kind of results from every planet if I go through it through Greek or if I go to it through Hebrew. I have a better understanding of the nuance of the powers in Greek because of the myths, and my understanding of the mythology has informed my understanding of the planets. And the thing is in Hebrew, when you look at in Agrippa, in the book 3 of Agrippa, it totally goes over the Kabbalism of Hermetic magic, everything that we know about Christian Kabbalah, or whatever you want to call it, the Hermetic Kabbalah of modern occultism is all spelled out in rudimentary form in book 3 of Agrippa. And all the names of God that I just listed, and Gabriel and all that stuff, all those things are basically from that. The Hebrew archangels, all of these descriptions of what these gods do or what these spheres represent align perfectly with the myths of the Greeks. So the Greek mythology informed the Hebrew Kabbalah regardless, because the same forces are represented in both. My moon is an 8th house. I don't know what that means. I'm sorry. Unrelated question to this lesson. Why do you think Hera is portrayed as so mean while Juno is really nice? Romans and Greeks, man. I mean, Romans have one perception on the rule of hearth and home, and the Greeks have another perception on the rule of hearth and home, right? So you can see that in the Greek culture, the wife was considered uh, harpy, like a harpy, a force, right? Somebody who's always trying to catch you when you're trying to go out and cheat on her and be a Zeus, right? She's the harpy, the vindictive owner of the vindictive person when you disrespect them, because the Greeks assume that you're gonna freaking hurt someone. That's just how it goes if you're Greek. The Romans assumed you were actually a decent human being and you could control your freaking self. And you weren't going to go out and just like cheat on everybody for crap's sake. You actually have a little bit of dignity, and you're going to actually put your passions as part of your overall self. They had the whole stoic approach to things. So, yeah, I think that's why Juno is really nice, is because she is respected as a wife in Roman culture, and in Greek culture, I don't think that women were given the same kind of respect, honestly. And that's my uneducated, bass backwards, white American, white Josh guy opinion on things. Whatever, I don't care. That's basically that's my opinion. Her Pentacles class is freaking amazing too. Yes. Thank you. It sounds the same as I chan it. Okay, great. Awesome. I think I've caught up. That was a great, of course. Thanks for sticking around, everybody. I appreciate your time. Have a great time. I hope that you use all the stuff that we went over in all these classes to change your world and make it a better place for me and everybody else. Bless one another, bless each other, bless. Make it a better place with all our magic, because why not? We can do that. And by all means, take care of yourself first. Appreciate everybody. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. I'm going to have to splice the videos together and get all that figured out somehow. I'm sorry for the inconvenience with everything. I appreciate everybody sticking through it, though. And thank you again for all your time. Have a great rest of your evening. Let's see.